talk about this wintry setup as we go ahead over the course of Tuesday into Wednesday across the First Coast. Now, I do want to stress this is live here Saturday morning. We still got 4 to 5 days to continue to watch this. And think of it, if we were talking about the tropics and a hurricane 4 to 5 days out, you would be saying, hey, if you're in the cone, we're right at the extent of it. There is still some uncertainty. We know we're going to be impacted, but the extent of said impact and what kind of weather we're going to get is still up in the air. So let's break down what we know now and what we have in our forecast. Then we're going to bring in Rich Donnelly here in just a few moments to talk about some common sense things you can do, even if you are in Northeast Florida, to prepare for that chance of some wintry weather. Now, taking a look at the extended outlook, we're recording this on Saturday, so we still have a weather impact alert for Saturday night into Sunday due to heavy rain. But that's going to usher in some much colder air. And on MLK Day, wind chills across the First Coast could be even into the 20s. Then Tuesday into Wednesday, we get another round of precip that's going to kick on in, and with that, it's going to be cold enough, you get the moisture in the atmosphere, and that's that chance of the wintry weather. And you can see that here in our future cast. This is one particular model we call the ECMWF, showing that low tracking well towards our south of I-4, with one that far south and the cold air already in place. That could bring some snow to places like Waycross, but I think for a good portion of the First Coast, we're going to talk more about sleet, the chance of freezing rain, and in a few minutes in this live update, I'm going to talk about what the difference is between them and the dynamics in the atmosphere. But also, we could be even looking at things like black ice if we get some rain, but the temperatures drop below the freezing point. So there's a mixed bag here across the First Coast. So keep that in mind when you're preparing for this. It's not going to be the heaviest snowfall in the world, but there is that wintry weather setup. This is a GFS model, for example, showing that rain freeze line a little bit further towards the north, not quite dipping down across, Jacksonville south. And I think this is probably more than likely going to be our setup here, with that rain snow line, even that chance of sleet or freezing rain extending from the I-10 corridor, maybe out towards Union and Bradford County, north. Chance of snow into straight snow into places like Waycross. If you are in Putnam County, Flagler, St. Johns County, you're probably going to stay just rain. Still have your warm rain gear ready to go. I mean, it's going to be chilly out there. High 30s and rain is not a comfortable day here on Wednesday morning. And same in the St. Johns County. That is going to be uncomfortable. But if we talk about Duval, especially north and western Duval, we're talking west of the river. That's when we're talking about sleet. Now, I think closer to the river and closer to the coast, it's going to be too much modifying effect coming in off of the ocean. The ground is not frozen by any means. And without frozen ground, once the snow hits it, if we do get any of that, it should melt on contact. So these are some things, not just the atmosphere, but things we keep in mind when we're talking about snowfall accumulation. So even off towards the north into southeastern Georgia, you might see some people sharing graphics, and I'll show you one example here in a minute of like inches of snow. The ground's too warm for that. It'll melt. But there is still some impacts to be had. I just want to stress that. Columbia and Baker, we're still talking about that chance of freezing rain. And even if you get 1/10 of an inch of freezing rain, that could do things like bring down weak tree limbs that are maybe still recovering after Hurricane Helene. That is also combined with a chance of some slick roads out there, ice on the roads. But even not just that, sleet can create kind of a slushy mix on the roadways, making for some messy weather. If you're new to the First Coast, we don't get this. Last time we had heavy snowfall around this area was in 1989. So we naturally don't have salting equipment. We don't have snow plows. So these are the things we need to keep in mind. And like I said, we're going to bring in Rich here in just a moment to talk about, what you can do to prepare for this. Wednesday, though, morning, I do think Waycross highest chance for all of these winter weather type setups. Now, this is the ice forecast based on one particular model, and this is the most aggressive. But this is something I do want to share for two reasons. One, this shows that demarcation line on the southern extent of this ice forecast for freezing rain. it's a very sharp drop off. And if this moved just a matter of miles, it makes a big difference with impact on some of our major metros or not. This is the most aggressive, but in this particular type of situation, this would be a big mess for a good portion of the first coast. A little bit warmer, though, and this all would shift further towards the north. And the same thing goes with the pure snow line. The snow forecast showing through Wednesday shows, really in the southeastern Georgia at this time, based on this particular model. This is the GFS. The ECMWF is a bit more aggressive. But the point is, there's still uncertainty here. There are layers to this between the rain, the sleet further north, and then that chance of some snow. We're smack right on that freezing line, So what you need to do is stay off the road and prep for that cold that is possible here. So with that said, and I'm going to break down the science and the forecast about this a little bit more in just a few minutes. We're going to go details in here. We're going to get into the weeds. But there's that chance of wintry precip. So I'm going to bring in Rich Donnelly. Rich, of course, not a meteorologist, but Rich, you know what you are. You grew up in Western New York, upstate New York, where you get lake effect snow, you get big winter weather events. You're an expert on what you need to do to common sense get prepared for the cold. Because we've seen videos, people say, hey, you got that snow shovel ready? I don't think that's an issue, right? So let's talk about this, Rich.
Shovel in Jacksonville, Florida. Yeah. I refuse to believe that. Listen, Robert, you went to school for meteorology. You are a trained meteorologist. I went to the school of wake up early because you have to go shovel and scrape off your mom's car. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to snow. Rochester, New York, born and bred. These items here, snow brushes, snow ice scrapers, these remain, all four of these, in the back seat of my SUV 12 months out of the year because I was born and raised in Rochester, and you never know when it might snow or scrape off the ice. This big one, in fact, this was back when I had a Ford Explorer. This heavy-duty monstrosity was in the back. It actually snapped in half when I was loading in my kayaks one day. Seriously, I keep it all year round for that reason. But before it broke off, this gnarly thing snapped in half there. And then this part could extend in case you needed to really go far and get a lot of snow coming down. A heavy-duty brush we're talking here. And then it's got a squeegee thing over on this side as well. And then look at this gnarly ice scraper here. It's got like 4 inches and then teeth as well. You could just scrape through anything. I also have this one. This is my normal go-to. Not quite as heavy-duty, but still long extending for the SUV. But I actually did use this last week, 2 weeks ago. We had like heavy frost, and honestly, I probably could have just like wiped it off with my hand, but I figured I have these in the back of my car. I'm going to use this. And then this bad boy here, it's got teeth where you could jab into the ice and then wax on, wax off, Karate Kid style.
It's one of my favorite ones right there.
But Robert, I got to say, this is what really frosts my cookies about what we've been doing with our forecast. A lot of the images of snow we've had, because we're just using like stock footage, are from up north where it really snows a lot. The whole idea of needing to have a shovel in your car to shovel out the snow or put chains on your tires, that's not what we're going to be getting here. And you can dive into the science more on that. That's so rare as well, even up there, to have chains on your tires. But some common sense things to just help you along, because we are going to have winter-ish weather. And I say ish somewhat flippantly because I am from upstate New York, where it's 0 degrees right now, and I've worn flip-flops every single day since November 5th of 2021 while I've been here in Florida. But there's some things that can really help our viewers at home who will be dealing with this for a full time. First of all, fill your car up with gas before all of the nasty weather comes, for 2 reasons. One, if you're having your car on longer to warm it up, and if you don't have all these ice scraping tools to scrape off the ice, let's just be honest, you're probably just going to have your car running for a long period of time to warm and defrost the windshield. Fill your car up with gas, because you are going to be using more gas than you normally would to just get your car warm. 2, the extra gas in your car helps weigh the car down in case you do get in a slick ice patch. The heavier your car, the more you'll be able to just continue as planned, as normal. And then we've seen it before. It sounds really, really weird and kind of dumb, but a bag of kitty litter in the back of your car, in the trunk, whatever, can also help weigh your car down. But if you do need to get in sort of a slick, rough patch, the kitty litter adds a little bit of extra traction. Now, if I-95 is totally iced over, if the Matthews Bridge is completely iced over, that bag of kitty litter is not going to do anything for your traction. But getting out of your driveway, honest to goodness, it could help a little bit. So those are some of the simple recommendations I would have for our viewers. One thing you and I, actually, Robert, this morning we were talking about, before all of the freezing rain comes, you could lay a piece of cardboard over your windshield. The cardboard will catch all the freezing rain. And then when you're ready to go, you take the cardboard off and your windshield is exposed as normal. And you don't have to worry about having all these heavy duty pieces of equipment. I mean, look at this gnarly thing.
And
it's like the size of a hand.
It's something like you could just use an Amazon box and throw it on there, and it'll cover up your window. And you're right, especially since we know this is going to happen, or at least to an extent, you can make a small
You are forecasting the possibility of this. And again, as far as I know, and you can dive into the science on all of this, we're not thinking huge, crippling, area-wide ice storm that would just drag down every power line.
The possibility is enough there to make the roads extra slick. So we want to make sure everybody's kind of being smart, being ready for
slow. If you do go on those roads, drive slow, drive with a purpose. Do not think you can weave in and out of traffic on Beach Boulevard like I know a lot of you do all the time. Just please don't. That's what's going to cause accidents. Thinking that you can overcome the snow because you have an SUV or a big heavy-duty truck. Listen, ice is nothing to mess with. Ice will cause you to spin out in fishtail. Be gentle on the gas. Don't slam on the brakes because then your car is going to spin around. Ease onto the brakes. Give yourself plenty of room.
General advice for just driving in general.
But
especially if you have some wintry precip out there.
And especially for southern drivers who do not have experience with winter weather. I joke all the time about being from up north. But listen, like, they are used to what we might experience. The other thing that I've seen often, you see it a lot on like Twitter and social media and stuff, when it's like sub-zero degree temperatures, people will boil water and then throw it outside and it evaporates. It's really cool to see on the internet. Don't do it here. So we're not getting that cold.
We've all seen these videos where Rich is talking about, so you throw the water up in the air and it instantly evaporates. It makes this beautiful crystals.
Oh, it's awesome.
It has to be like -10 to do that.
Yeah, we're not
if you do that at 30, it's not going to evaporate.
I'm not going to say never, because the Ice Age happened and saber-toothed tigers were walking around the world at one point. But in our lifetime, I refuse to believe that it will ever be cold enough in Florida for that to happen. And even up in Waycross and like the further extents of our
it won't be that cold.
It's not going to get that cold. Like, you're talking wind chills in like the low 20s-ish.
That's the coldest.
Wind chills. For that type of nonsense of throwing the water in the air, you need like sustained actual temperature of negative degrees.
One more thing I do want to say here, Rich, and we're talking about common sense. There's one last thing, and I only say this for 90% of our viewers here. They're going to be like, duh. But don't spill hot water on your windows, please.
Yeah, that could crack your windshield.
Shatter them.
The difference between the temperature grade, like that could be a big issue. And then where are you going? You got a gigantic crack down the middle of your windshield.
Yeah.
That doesn't help anyone.
So thanks, Rich. Common sense things.
Winter weather really grinds my gears.
Well, Rich will be here all weekend and all week talking about.
I'm putting these back in my car because you never know. But it's just raining today. It's just a miserable day outside.
Just a miserable day out there. But Tuesday night into Wednesday, Rich, you're going to be the most popular person on your block if you have those in there. Unless hopefully people take our advice.
Actually,
head out to the store and get
I got some questions for you, Robert.
All right.
So you have the different models out there. The GFS, I think I named that one, and there's like a European and a Canadian, and other things like that. What do you think is the most reliable for different types of weather? So we've got different. I know these are different models, so they just sort of have their own ideas about things. When it comes to like hurricanes, do rely on a specific one, and now that we've got like winter weather, does like a normally tropical sensed model not necessarily give you the best indication of cold weather?
It's true,
because I liked what you saw with the GFS. The GFS is just rainy on Tuesday, Wednesday, and it's just a miserable day, but nothing freezing, nothing dangerous.
Well, I think the Euro in this type of situation is actually better, the ECMWF. The GFS is good, but it does tend to lean a little bit more extreme with warmer temperatures on the first coast.
Okay.
A lot of the times on normal days, the GFS will say it's going to be 90 when it's actually 80. So I'm kind of leaning more to the ECMWF for that because they tend to get our temperatures a little bit more solid, but at the same time,
because the temperature is the key to everything results-wise.
Oh yeah, but there's
31 degrees, 33 degrees.
There's another thing that's pretty key, and you're right with the temperature, but it's liquid to snow accumulation, like the ratios. So one thing the ECMWF I don't think does very well, and I'm going to talk about this in a moment, is if it's 32 degrees out, it's cold. Usually it's about a 10-to-1 ratio from rain over to snowfall. But if it's right above or just below the freezing point, actually right above, I should say, it's a little bit wetter, so the snow doesn't accumulate as much. So these are factors we think into it.
That's
I think
another
both
thing. When we
models.
talk snowfall, like I have, again, a lot of experience with snow, and this time of year is like you be playing pond hockey outside up where we're from. Normally, like in Rochester and stuff, when we get like big storms in like October, November, and yeah, if you're down in Florida, it starts snowing in Rochester in like October sometimes. It just happens. But because the ground is not frozen, the snow doesn't stay. Like it melts almost immediately. Like right now, it's 70 degrees outside today. Like the ground's not going to be frozen. Like I find it very hard to believe we're going to have accumulated snow.
And that's why we've been stressing wintry mix. Accumulated snow, a Hallmark movie where you go outside and you got snow out there is less and less likely.
But to your point, that's why being weather aware is actually more important for our viewers, because it's not going to be a Hallmark movie. That would actually be the best winter conditions you could have, because you could just shovel the snow and there you go, you're fine. That wintry mix, the frozen roads, that happens when you have that sort of in-between weather, and that's what's tough. That's what's going to cause car accidents, and that's what's going to ruin your day.
All right. Well, Rich, thank you very much for stopping by. You can stay. You don't have to go anywhere. But
as a shameful plug, I'm going to go work on a future Stories of Service. We're meeting an Army veteran who found the help he needed to turn his life around through a court system, the Veterans Treatment Court here in Jacksonville. So that story coming up Monday on First Coast News.
Well, thanks, Rich. Hey, you're talking about driving. We just had a viewer question too about flights. Now, before you go, do you know one key thing that a lot of airports up north have?
De-icing machines.
De-icing machines. Mm-hmm. Jacksonville, last I checked, now unless they've changed recently, doesn't have much in the form of de-icing. And why should we? We don't really get it around here. It just isn't available. I know our military bases definitely don't have it because I've worked with them. And if we had icing in the area, flights are down to the ground. So if you work for NAS Jax or Mayport, don't expect flights to be taken off. But for Jax International, last I checked, I don't think we have much in the form of de-icing out there. So that means if we get freezing rain, first off, if we get freezing rain, getting to the airport, probably not going to happen. But second, the plane's just going to have to sit there in the sun until it melts and goes away.
Talk about a delay to your next destination.
Yes.
Oof.
So there's a outside of just the snow, there's a range of impacts from icing to sleet to rain. So let's continue to break this down. Thank you very much, Rich.
Absolutely. Happy to be with you, and I enjoy all the science talk coming up that you will lead and I will listen.
All right. Thanks, Rich. All right. So let's break this down a little bit more then. Let's go through the snow model comparisons because we were just talking about, there's the ratios here. For example, the GFS, you can see right here for Waycross specifically. That's what this is showing. The GFS actually, and the last model run, I only had about 1/10 of an inch. They've backed it off completely, and I think there's a reason for this as far as snow accumulation, because you see the ECMWF is going 5 to 6 to 8 inches. Now, one, I think the ECMWF is handling the temperatures a little bit better, but two, the ECMWF I feel like is also has a bad side to it. It's computing a 10-to-1 ratio, and when I say 10-to-1, I mean when it's cold out, 30 degrees. So just below the freezing point, prime snowmaking conditions. So every 1 inch of rain equals 10 inches of snow. What I think we're going to see more so here across the first coast, since we're just at about the freezing point, is closer to the 1 inch of rain equals 2 to 5 inches of snow, which in the end means a lot less snow accumulation. It would be more of a sloppy, slushy. Maybe you can make a snowball, but it's gonna be a sweaty snowball out here. Not the greatest snowman type of making stuff here. And this all has to do with the atmosphere too, about what's happening not only at the surface but in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Now, if we're from the surface 32 degrees or lower all the way up to the cloud base, you get your pretty snowflakes. But let's say there's a little warm layer in there, just above. So it melts just a little bit. Then basically it's no longer going to be a snowflake. Even if it refreezes, it's going to refreeze as an ice pellet. Or if it stays super cool, that means it's below the 32 degree mark, but it's a water droplet and it hits the ground. That could mean freezing rain. There is a range of impacts here that could be happening. And unfortunately, right at that freezing rain sleet line is kind of where we're seeing the setup for the first coast. It's smack right there in the middle. And even let's say we get rain out there. But, and even today we get rain out there. Temperatures Monday morning are going to be dropping below the freezing point. This is the wind chills for Monday morning, by the way. We could be looking, if there's water on the ground, at a black ice risk. So there is that various impacts here, especially for places across southeast Georgia. There's your morning lows for Waycross, for example, 27 to 26. I think if you want winter weather, and let's say you want the wintry conditions, Waycross is a spot to be across southeast Georgia over towards Folkston, maybe even into Brunswick. And also don't forget, we don't have the signs. I was just told this a moment ago. We don't have the signs in Florida. And I guess I've noticed it, but I never really thought about it, about bridges that freeze before the surrounding roadways. Southeast Georgia, you do have those signs over a lot of bridges. That is because it's not just colder further towards the north, but if you have a bridge, the cooling off of the bridge, the surface area is more than just a normal roadway because it's going to cool from the base and the top at the same time versus just a normal road. It just cools from the top, and thus you get ice accumulating on it faster, things like black ice, slick conditions, and stuff like that. So bridges, friends, even if we get a little bit of sloppy wintry mix out there, the bridges over the St. John's, even things like the Main Street Bridge, lower to the ground. You don't think about that during hurricanes, but during a wintry weather, that could cause them to be closed just because they could freeze up pretty quickly, and we just don't have salt to be thrown on it around here. So these are all things to just keep in mind. Like I said, again, I can't stress enough, guys, we're not trying to say that this is going to be the biggest snowstorm in the world, but it is going to have some impacts here on the first coast with sleet, freezing rain, and the chance of snow. Your local winter weather criteria is different than up north, too. So if you see a winter weather warning issued by the Jacksonville National Weather Service, do keep in mind, it's not saying we're going to see a foot of snow. All we need here on the first coast for a winter storm warning is over an inch of snow or ice or sleet that will impact transportation. As I mentioned, Jack's Airport, if you get some icing and the flights are grounded, that does impact transportation. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get a winter storm warning in parts of the first coast. Likely not Putnam, Flagler County, further towards the south. But if we're talking about I-10 North, it's a possibility. They haven't been issued yet. Our fantastic meteorologists at the Jacksonville National Weather Service are working hard, tracking this and keeping us updated here, as well as at First Coast News with your most accurate weather team. We're going to have team coverage with this, with you the whole time, of course, streaming here at First Coast News Plus as well. We're going to have people up there in Waycross. That's probably where I'm going to be, since, they often send me to the heart of the storm and hurricanes around here. I'll probably be heading up to southeast Georgia for the snowfall, which, you know what? Sounds like a good time. That's why I do this job, is to experience the weather out there. And, we'll keep you guys posted. Also, check out firstcoastnews.com. If you're already watching this here, great. But we have multiple articles breaking this down county by county. Most of the graphics that I used in this update are also posted there as well. So you can get more information, or you can just send us a question. But as always, thanks for watching. And we're going to keep you posted here at First Coast News.